Welcome back, everyone. And we got a pretty great card lined up here, even though a number of fights have fallen off. And at the time of recording this, it looks like we only have 10 fights on the card right now. Maybe they'll add a few more, but as of right now, there are only 10 fights. And before we get into that, we got to do the recap for last event. And overall, from a betting perspective, I did lose 4.46 units on the night. So taking a quick look at it, let's take a look at the props first, actually. So I had Song Kanan by TKO, Santos inside the distance, and Bays in round one. Obviously, none of those hit, but I felt the odds on those weren't too bad, so I took a small shot on that. And then the one prop that did hit was Giles by decision. I did ultimately end up, taking Giles money line, but I felt that, if he were to win, it would most likely be by decision. So I put a little bit on that, and that did come through there. And taking a look at the straight picks, Kevin Holland, yeah, that happened. I mean, that was always a possibility. He would be a little too comfortable playing off his back. Although, I definitely felt that on the feet, he had a pretty significant advantage. And I think that if he stayed a bit more composed in there, he could have hurt Brunson and likely gotten him out of there. But, Holland was just a little wild when he was on the feet. He overcommitted on a lot of shots, and that led to him getting taken down and just controlled there for 5 rounds. But I think there were moments in there that, he definitely could have gotten Brunson out if, he was just a bit more composed, a bit more measured. Leonardo Santos, Grant Dawson, I did take a shot on Santos there. Surprisingly, he was down on the scorecards. I actually felt that, he should have been up maybe, or he should have won at least one of those rounds, possibly 2 rounds. But, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter because made a very, very boneheaded mistake going for those heel hooks and ankle locks. But, ended up getting ground and pounded there. Felt kind of bad for him there, actually. Took quite a bit of damage. And then JP Bays, Bruno Silva. Man, I thought that Bays would go to his wrestling more, but I don't think he even shot for a takedown. And very, very poor showing there. I really expected him to use his wrestling more, but yeah, that didn't happen. Very disappointing there. And the only straight pick that hit was the Giles over Dolidze. I did put a unit on that one because I felt that Dolidze going down a weight class probably not the best idea for him, especially since his cardio has always been very suspect. I knew that Giles would have the better, crisper boxing in there. It was a very close one, but at the end of the day, I got the slight dog odds on Giles, and I felt that's where the value was. I thought it was very close to a pick'em fight, or at least slight favorite for Giles. He was able to get it done in a very, very, very tight one, but that did hit. But overall, in the night, did lose 4.46 units. So not a great look, but again, looking to bounce back here. And I think we got a lot of opportunities on this card, even though there's only 10 fights. There are a number of spots that I really like, actually. So without further ado, let's get right into this UFC 260 card. Marc-Andre Barriault versus Azaitar. And just to make it clear here, this is the shittier Azaitar. I think Ottman's the good one here, or the better one. So I just wanted to get that out of the way really quickly here. But taking a look at the betting odds, it's, Marc-Andre Barriault is the minus 120 favorite. Azaitar plus 100 underdog. Taking a look at Marc-Andre Barriault first, I mean, he's had a pretty unfortunate run in the UFC so far, 0-3-1. It seems the UFC really likes him and are keeping him around, but I can't imagine him not getting cut if he loses this fight. But I can see why they like him. I mean, he's a pretty fun fighter when he's getting it going. But as we've seen, he has struggled against guys who I think either have good grappling or are good defensively sound strikers who can really, disrupt the rhythm of Marc-Andre Barriault and look to punish him when he's coming in with some of his combos. We saw that in all 3 of his losses, against Sanchez, Jocko, and Parku. All have a bit of wrestling in their back pocket and, are actually decent defensive strikers. And then the one time he did have success was against Pihota, who is a bit more of an offensive striker, similar to Marc-Andre Barriault here. Except Barriault, he was really able to get his game going. He was able to pressure and really just get into a rhythm early. Barriault is a bit plotty on the feet, but he is able to generate quite a bit of power from his shots because of that. He's got pretty decent combination striking and very heavy overhand. I don't think he's a very high level striker or anything, but I think he does his best work when he is pressuring, when he's the one moving forward and the one who is really just being able to dictate the pace. As far as the grappling goes, he doesn't really shoot any offensive takedowns, and defensively, his takedown defense isn't particularly great, and his get-ups aren't that good either. So, the most obvious path to victory against Barriault would just be to look to take him down, control him, or really just grind up against him and just take away his biggest weapon, which is his offensive striking. And, if you're able to do that, you can have a lot of success against Barriault. But taking a look at his opponent, Azaitar, I don't think Azaitar really has much of offensive wrestling as well. So I don't think he's able to really use that sort of a game plan. I mean, I have seen Azaitar shoot takedowns, but it's not a really big part of his game. He's primarily a striker as well, a counter striker, I might want to add. His head movement is pretty good, and same with his footwork, although, it does look like he slows down quite a bit after that first round. While he has shown some offensive takedowns, his defensive grappling isn't great either. Azaitar also tends to back up quite often. He will occasionally blitz in with hooks, but a lot of the time he is just looking to throw some counters. He will throw a few body kicks, leg kicks as well, but that's just more to stay busy and not really looking to do like serious damage. Again, he's not very high output since he is pretty reliant on landing those counter shots, and I think his cardio is really suspect as well, so that explains why his output might be a little bit lower. But taking a look at this matchup, I think that Marc-Andre Barriault will have a lot of success moving forward, especially since Azaitar is very happy to concede pressure here. He's going to let Barriault move forward, and defensively, Azaitar is not that great, and I don't think he's going to be able to punish Barriault too much. I mean, maybe in that first round he might be able to catch him with some counter shots, but if he isn't, or if Barriault is able to walk through some of those, I think the forward pressure of Barriault will get to Azaitar, especially in the later rounds, as Azaitar starts to slow down a bit. I think there's a decent chance that this fight will play out similar to the Barriault versus Piota matchup, where Barriault was able to get his offense going early. He was able to get into a rhythm and really just start to land clean. And I just see that playing pretty similarly to this one here, because Azaitar, again, like I said, he does seem to concede pressure early. And if he isn't able to land clean, those counter shots clean early, Barriault could very well start running away with it, by the time that first round ends. And it's also worth noting that Azaitar, he's 35 and is coming off a pretty long layoff himself. It's going to be nearly 2.5 years. And, at this age, the layoff and his limited skill set, I think it makes this a pretty tough matchup for him. Obviously, he is dangerous. He's got a lot of power, and, he could very well catch Barriault here, but I don't think that's super likely. And, if he isn't able to catch Barriault, I see Barriault running away with a pretty comfortable decision, possibly even a late round knockout if Azaitar isn't on point with his defense, and especially if Azaitar starts to tire out, I can see Barriault likely getting a finish as well. So yeah, I'm going to take Barriault here, and I do already have a unit placed on him, and I'm looking to possibly put a little bit on a round 2, round 3 knockout prop once that does come out. So yeah, pick is Barriault, and putting a small bet on him. Gillian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick, and this fight was initially set for I think early February and has been rebooked, but I can see why. I think the UFC really either wants to give Maverick the push or just get Robertson back on track here. But taking a look at the odds, Maverick is going to be the -162 favorite, and the comeback on Robertson is +142. And let's take a look at Maverick first. She's got decent striking. I mean, she's coming from a Muay Thai background, but I don't think it's like super high level or anything. Overall, she mixes it up pretty well on the feet. We'll throw the low kicks, high kicks, and we'll work the body as well. Her footwork is decent, and she's got okay combination striking as well. She also seems to have quite a bit of power in her shots, but defensively, she is still very hittable. Is pretty easily countered, leaves her hands low, and doesn't really move her head off the center line, as we've seen in her last fight against Joshua, who in my opinion, is extremely low level. And even Jojo was able to touch her up, but the difference was just the power. I mean, Maverick was landing pretty clean on Jojo and was able to get her out of there because of cut that got opened up, and the doctor had to come in and stop the fight. But I honestly wouldn't take too much out of that performance. Like I said before, Jojo was very low level, and even in that fight, Maverick, her poor defense was leading her to get touched up by Joshua. With that said, though, I think that Maverick probably does her best work on the ground. I think she is more dominant when she's the one initiating takedowns, when she's the one that's got top control. But her defensive grappling leaves a bit to be desired. She's not that good in scrambling situations, and her takedown defense actually isn't that great. I don't think I've really seen her sprawl or dig underhooks, and once she's on her back, she's not particularly good at working her way back up, and does seem a little bit lost there. And that is going to be a pretty big concern, especially coming into this fight against Robertson, who is primarily a grappler. And taking a look at Robertson, I mean, her striking isn't great. I do give the advantage to Maverick here. Again, Robertson, she's got decent footwork, good feints, good jab, mainly just 1-2, very simple striking. But really, she's just looking to get the fight to the ground. And as far as the grappling goes for Robertson, I think she's the much stronger grappler in this matchup. She's got a good single and double leg, good body lock and trip takedowns as well. And, she will chain wrestle, if she isn't able to get you down in that first, attempt. And her top control is actually pretty good, and same with her submission attempts. Although recently I've seen her maintain top control and look to hunt submissions less, but which is good. Personally I prefer if fighters look to just maintain good position as opposed to just trying to hunt for submissions and giving up a dominant position. So taking a look at this matchup, I'm going to favor Robertson here actually. Because on the feet, I think that although Maverick is a bit better, I don't give her a massive advantage on the feet or anything. I think that her striking is a little overrated because of that one performance against Joshua. And, she does hit hard, and I guess that is the big equalizer in this matchup. But I don't think technically, on the feet, she is much better than Maverick or much better than Robertson. And, on the ground, I give a pretty significant advantage to Robertson. I know that Maverick is, she's pretty strong, and, her offensive takedowns are decent, but when she's the one that's being taken down and when she's the one that's on her back, it is a bit of a liability there. So I do actually favor Robertson, as she's the one that's likely going to be shooting for the takedowns here. However, the size advantage could be a real factor here, because we have seen Robertson struggle a bit when she's taken down by a much stronger, wrestler, as we've seen in her fight against Santos. And Maverick could very well just kind of outmuscle her, hold her up against the cage, or pin her up against the ground. But I don't know how likely that is. I'd have to maybe wait to see the weigh-in and see how they size up. But Robertson, she is still dangerous off her back, and Maverick is still a bit green. So if she's not careful, she could get subbed here, find herself in a very awkward position. But on the ground, I still just give Robertson much bigger, clearer advantage, even if Robertson is the one who's on her back. So I'm going to pick Robertson to win here. I think that if she's the one that's initiating the grappling exchanges, she could accumulate quite a bit of control time, likely win rounds, and possibly even get a submission here. On the feet, I don't think there's going to be a massive skill discrepancy. Maverick might actually hurt Robertson on the feet, but I think Robertson will look to just close the distance and get her hands on Maverick as soon as she can. So the pick here is Robertson, and I do actually have a unit placed on her because as far as how I line this fight, I think at worst it should be a pick'em, and I actually do slightly favor Robertson here, but I think at worst it should be a pick'em. So the odds are a little off. So I've got a unit placed on Robertson already, but again, the pick is Robertson, and I do have one unit on her. We'll wait to see what the submission prop looks like. If it's a really big number, I might put a little bit on that too, but most likely I will just keep it at Robertson money line here. Michal Oleksiejczuk versus Modestas Bukauskas, and this one should be a pretty fun one for as long as it lasts. Taking a look at the betting lines first, though, Oleksiejczuk is the -147 favorite, and the comeback on Bukauskas is plus 127. And let's take a look at Bukauskas first. So on the feet, I mean, he's a bit slow, although he is a little light on his feet, and will look to pump the jab. That being said, though, his shots are pretty telegraphed. You could usually see when that overhand or that 1-2 is coming. Does seem to pack a bit of power with the shots, and does load up on it a little bit. But there are just some massive, massive holes in his defense, though. He's extremely hittable and leaves himself open to counters quite a bit. Like, we kind of saw that in his fight against Crute, where he kept just eating overhands after throwing a kick or a punch. And, eventually he did get knocked out in that fight. On top of that, it does seem like he is quite susceptible to leg kicks. Although, I haven't really seen Oleksiejczuk throw too many leg kicks. Bukauskas' durability is a bit questionable as well. He's been knocked out twice already, and I've seen him hurt on a number of occasions. As far as his grappling goes, haven't seen too much offensively, and defensively, I have seen him just get held up against the cage and controlled for long periods of time. But he gets away with it. He's able to get out of those situations, tire his opponents out, and land some pretty heavy bombs on him. But for the sake of this matchup, I don't think there will be too much grappling going on. Both guys are primarily strikers, and I think the smart game plan for Bukauskas would be to look to tie Oleksiejczuk up and just tire him out, take away his striking. But I'm not sure if that'll happen here. I think if it stays, or I think there's a good chance this will be primarily a standing fight. And taking a look at his opponent, Oleksiejczuk, Oleksiejczuk's really aggressive on the feet. He's like a bulldog in there, likes to back opponents down, really dig to the body, swing those massive hooks to the head, and he packs quite a bit of power for someone his size. He usually does have the speed advantage in there since he's usually the much smaller fighter. I mean, I think Oleksiejczuk could very easily make 185, as he doesn't really cut any weight at 205. But yeah, he's pretty light on the feet and can definitely crack. And taking a look at this matchup, I'd favor Oleksiejczuk quite a bit in this standing. I think he'll be the much quicker guy in there. I think he'll be beating Bukauskas to the punch. What I see happening is Oleksiejczuk likely pressuring Bukauskas, backing him up, just digging to the body, probably hurting him there, and then as Bukauskas starts to lower his hands a bit to defend those body shots, he'll leave his head open and leaving him wide open for Oleksiejczuk to land those nasty hooks of his. I think there's a decent chance that Oleksiejczuk will get Bukauskas out of there. I think those body shots are really going to hurt him, and then I think eventually he will knock him out, probably in the first or second round here. Again, like I said before, Bukauskas has very questionable durability, and if this stays standing, I think Oleksiejczuk will likely get him out of there. I think for Bukauskas to really have success, he'll have to look to tie Oleksiejczuk up, work his grappling a bit, since that's really where we see Oleksiejczuk struggle the most because of just the massive size and strength advantage he gives up in this division. I think anyone that's able to get his hands on him, grapple with him a bit, is really just able to overpower him and control him. However, I haven't really seen much grappling out of Bukauskas, so I'm not going to be super confident that he is able to pull it off. I think more likely than not, this will be a stand-up fight, and if that's the case, I think Oleksiejczuk is just going to look to back Bukauskas down and eventually hurt him and likely get the knockout. So as far as the pick goes, I'm going to go with Oleksiejczuk, and I have already put 2 units on him at minus 147 here. And once the props do come out, I'll be looking to maybe put a little bit on Oleksiejczuk by knockout and maybe a little sprinkle on Oleksiejczuk round 1 knockout. So the pick here is Oleksiejczuk, and I do have 2 units on him already, and we'll look to put a little more on the knockout prop. Gooden versus Abubakar Nurmagomedov, and I just got to say, I think Abubakar is probably the worst Nurmagomedov on the roster right now, and he's going to be the minus, I think, 225, minus 225 favorite here, and the comeback on Gooden is plus 190. And let's take a look at Gooden first. He's primarily a striker. He's got a good jab, straight right, 1-2 down the pipe. He does have quite a bit of power, but again, he does tend to load up on a lot of his shots. He has shown some good clinch knees and elbows from the break, and defensively, he is a bit hittable. I mean, his footwork and head movement isn't great, so he gets tagged up quite a bit. And, as we saw in his last fight against a much higher level striker, Joban was able to touch him up pretty badly there. And even in a lot of his regional fights, he does get touched up. It's just that he's able to land cleaner and harder on some of his opponents. I haven't really seen much from his grappling. I mean, he did get taken down pretty easily by Marcel Stamps. He was able to reverse positions, but Stamps just didn't really look very experienced on the ground there. He didn't really have any good top control, and a lot of the time Gooden was able to just stand right up, and Stamps wasn't really able to offer any sort of resistance there. And for Nurmagomedov, his striking, it's not bad. It's it's kind of limited, but he is fundamentally and technically sound. He's just not a super layered striker, and he won't give him a ton of looks. But I think he's got good tight boxing. But as you would expect, though, his best work is done on the ground. He's got decent timing on his level change. He's got a good double leg, single leg. His top control isn't particularly good. From a number of his fights that I've seen, opponents have been able to scramble out of it and get up on a lot of occasions. But, he will chain takedowns together. We'll look to get opponents up against the cage, get him down, look to work a bit of ground and pound. As we did see in his fight against Zuada, he got a little careless when he was posturing up and gave up the triangle choke. But, in a number of his other fights, it does look like opponents are able to work their way back up when he's, starting to posture up. It gives him a bit of space when he's working that ground and pound. So, as far as Nurmagomedov goes, his grappling isn't that great. I mean, he will beat a lot of regional guys, and for the sake of this matchup, I think he will beat Gooden. But, he's definitely on the lower end of the Nurmagomedov grapplers. I also do want to mention his cardio isn't that great either, at least, from what we've seen so far. In his fight against, Bojan Velikovic, he did start to tire out pretty hard after that first round, and it was really only a 2-round fight. So I'm not sure if, he could sustain, a grappling heavy attack for 3 rounds against Gooden. That being said, though, Bojan was working really hard on the ground there to work his way back up and, offered a lot of resistance. I'm not sure how much resistance Gooden is willing to offer here or is able to offer, but, if he's constantly making Nurmagomedov work, he's, working his way back up, making Nurmagomedov really just exert himself, chaining takedowns together. I could see Gooden having a bit of success in the later rounds, with his striking if Nurmagomedov gets really tired. But, yeah, as far as the pick goes, I'm going to side with Nurmagomedov here. Even though I haven't really seen too much from Gooden's, defensive grappling, I think that, Nurmagomedov, he's got a great corner, he's got a great team, and, at the end of the day, his grappling actually isn't that bad. It's just not quite on the level of some of his Dagestani training partners and teammates. So, yeah, I think he'll get it done in the grappling department. But I wouldn't bet on him. He's at minus 225. He's still got quite a bit to prove. And even though Jared Gooden's a bit lower level opponent, he could be in a lot of trouble late if he starts to gas. And, Gooden is starting to put it on him later in the fight. But yeah, I'll side with Nurmagomedov here, even though I'm not super confident. I just don't think Gooden is that good. Hasn't really been fighting any high level opponents. And I haven't really seen much, or at least enough from his ground game to think that he'll be able to stuff the takedowns or work his way back up. So the pick is Nurmagomedov, but very low confidence, and most likely will not be betting this fight just because I think both guys are a little unreliable at this point. Jessica Penne versus Hannah Goldy, and this is an interesting matchup. Not super excited for it, but taking a look at the betting odds here, it is a pick'em fight, minus 110, both ways here, obviously. But taking a look at Penne first, I mean, she's decent on the feet, very fundamentally and technically sound, but very simple with her striking. Jab, 1-2, we'll throw a few leg kicks in there. Decent footwork, not super great at cutting off the cage or anything, but, just very technically and fundamentally sound striking. Again, not super layered with her striking, but it gets the job done against, I guess, lower level fighters. She does like to mix in offensive takedowns, but we haven't really been seeing that in her most recent fights, although it was against pretty high level opponents in Miocic and Andrade. And then in her fight against Danielle Taylor, she didn't look too bad. I definitely think that if she pressured a little more and shot a takedown at the end of each round, she could very easily have won that fight. But that was just a very kind of low output back and forth fight and really hard to score, but definitely a winnable fight for Penne if she was a little more aggressive. And taking a look at Goldy, I'm not really impressed with her at all. I mean, I know a lot of people say, T-Rex arms, but she legitimately looks like a T-Rex out there. She's got very short reach, and, if anything, she reminds me of the people who wear those T-Rex costumes just flailing around in there. I mean, just the way she's skipping around in the octagon, throwing those 1-2s and barely landing on her opponents. It's very comical and a little sad. But yeah, that's just how she fights. I mean, she just is constantly circling out, will throw a jab, a couple leg kicks, and maybe look to counter occasionally, throw a few hooks. But yeah, that's generally just how she fights. And I feel like her output is a bit overrated. Somehow she landed 141 significant strikes against Callie Robbins, but if you're watching that fight live, it definitely does not feel like she's landing that many shots. I think they were really just giving her, anything that even touched Callie Robbins, whether it's like a soft little, leg kick or just, if she is able to even touch her on the arms, they're counting that as a significant strike. But, as far as her output goes, though, I don't think it's great at all. She is in great shape, though, and her cardio seems to check out. I mean, she's just constantly skipping around in there, and she's able to do it for 3 rounds. So I think her cardio is going to be on point, and she definitely looks really strong in there. But from a technical standpoint, she's really not that good. And I'm going to favor Penne in here quite a bit. Even though Penne is a bit older, she's 38 and is coming off of a 3-year layoff. I just feel that Penne is the much more technical striker in there. She's got the length advantage too, so Goldy is going to have some issue closing the distance, especially with her short little arms. I think that Penne will be the one that's pressuring this fight, and usually when she's the one going forward, she's had much more success. So I think she's going to have the slightly more output, will land a bit cleaner, land a little more. And if she mixes in the takedowns as well, I think Penne could really easily win a pretty clear decision here. But yeah, I've already got a unit placed on Penne here. I think, again, like I said before, just overall the better striker and I'd say the better mixed martial artist. The only concern really is the long layoff, and she is a bit older. And, Hannah Goldy, she is taking I think a year off as well. And, who knows, she could be making some improvements, but I haven't really seen anything to indicate that just yet. So I think the odds are very fair here. I think that Penne should be a bigger favorite, but again, I guess the layoff and the age is a bit of a concern. But yeah, I'm going to go with Penne here. Win via decision. I already have a unit placed on her, and then again, once the props come out, I might put a little bit on Penne by decision as Alonzo well. Menifield versus William Knight, and a very intriguing matchup here. It is a pick'em fight, -110 both ways, and I guess the narrative behind that is that either Menifield is able to just starch William Knight here, or Knight is able to just grind out, a 3-round, decision. I don't quite agree with that sentiment, and I'll get into it in just a second here. But let's take a look at each fighter first. Starting with Menifield. So, pretty straightforward, pretty basic, actually. He loves to throw those hooks, loves to blitz in, land those power shots. He is a bit plotty, but, that's pretty much what he likes to do. Just come in, swinging bombs, and look to just get his opponent out of there quick and early. It does look like he struggles a bit with his defensive grappling, as we've seen in the Devin Clark fight, but Clark just looked to close the distance as soon as he can to really just neutralize the striking of Menifield here. The cardio of Menifield also isn't that great. I mean, you kind of expect it with someone who's, very muscular, a lot of power. The gas tank is going to go much quicker, because of all that muscle taking up all that oxygen. But yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums up Menifield. Pretty straightforward fighter in my opinion. And taking a look at his opponent, William Knight, I'd say pretty similar, just as far just with the grappling. His striking is he's a bit plotty, very basic. He is primarily a grappler, like I said before. He's got very very smothering top control, will hang off his opponents, lay on top of them, work the ground and pound. I mean, yeah, Knight is he's a very strong guy. He's very short and stocky too. Guy just is a bit of a pit bull. If he's able to get his hands on you, you're in trouble because of how strong he is. He can really just muscle his opponents down to the ground and really just look to lay on top of them, hold them there. He's had a lot of success doing that, although it has been against relatively low level and pretty inexperienced opponents. But as far as this matchup goes, I don't think that'll be too big of an issue since Menifield, he's not really a high level guy either. We're not super experienced. As far as the cardio goes, though, I don't think Knight's is much better. Although I have seen him, go 3 rounds, with a pretty grappling heavy game plan. So I do think it's a bit better than Menifield's here, but I don't think it's like much better. I also think that Knight's fight IQ is a little questionable, as we saw in the Nchukwi fight where he was overcommitting for a takedown and ended up eating a number of elbows and I think a spinning back fist or back elbow. Eventually got rocked and lost via ground and pound there. But taking a look at this matchup, I favor Menifield here actually. Like I was saying before, there seems to be a bit of a narrative that this is essentially a 50-50 fight in the sense that either Menifield's are going to get the knockout or Knight is able to get his hands on Menifield and just grind him out to a decision here. But I definitely think there's a much better than 50% chance that Menifield is able to knock Knight out. For one, Knight, he's very plotty on the feet, keeps his hands low, and on the feet I give Menifield quite a significant advantage. I mean, Menifield isn't a much more technical striker, but the way Knight holds his hands down and just how low output he is on the feet, I think that Menifield will have quite a significant advantage, especially with his the power and the explosiveness that he has. And as we've seen with Menifield, although he's not particularly high level, I think he's good enough to knock out some barely UFC caliber guys like Paul Craig and Vinicius Moreira. Obviously Moreira extremely chinny, but what I'm trying to say here really is that Menifield, he'll lose to decent, caliber UFC fighters like OSP, who's a, veteran of the game. Devin Clark, who, not that great, but is, I'd say UFC caliber still. And, he'll beat guys that are barely UFC caliber, and he'll likely beat a lot of regional guys too. And I feel that Knight just falls into that category. I don't think that Knight is really high level at all. He's a bit slow, a bit plotty, and is really reliant on his grappling, which his top control is great. He's got decent takedowns, but I don't think he's a really high level wrestler. He relies a bit on his strength to just outmuscle opponents and just get him to the ground. So essentially, I just don't really think that Knight is UFC caliber, and even if he is, I think he's like borderline. So this is, I think, a pretty good matchup for Menifield. I think there's a good chance that Menifield catches him and is able to knock him out. So I've already got a unit placed on Menifield here, and I'm waiting for the props to open up. I will likely put maybe half a unit on Menifield by knockout, and then put a little bit on Menifield first round knockout as well. I honestly think there's a pretty good chance that Menifield is able to get Knight out of there. Knight is just way too slow and plotty. I think that Menifield should be able to find his chin here. And, even against someone like Clark, I don't think Menifield did too bad. He was able to get through, some of his punches were able to get through the guard of Clark. And even in that second round, I thought that Menifield had a few moments in there. So, yeah, I don't think Knight is quite even close to that level of wrestling as Clark, and Menifield was still able to find some success there. So I think more likely than not, Menifield will get the knockout here. So the pick here is Menifield. Do have a unit bet placed on him, and we'll look to put a bit more on the knockout prop once those come out. Khama Worthy versus Jamie Mullarkey, and I'm a little surprised this fight is still on the card considering Volkanovski, Shane Young, and Brad Riddell were all pulled from their card. I'm thinking that Mullarkey I think he's from the same camp, so there's a chance that this might get pulled too, but I haven't gotten any news on that yet, so I'll just continue with the breakdown here. And taking a look at the betting lines first, actually, Khama Worthy's the -145 favorite, and the comeback on Mullarkey is plus 125. So taking a look at Mullarkey first, on the feet, he's not too bad. I mean, he's not great or anything, but he definitely is able to get by enough on it so that he can shoot his takedowns, which really is where his strength lies. But yeah, on the feet, I mean, he's got decent footwork, does keep his hands up, nice jab. We'll throw a 1-2, but overall, his striking game is a bit limited. It is serviceable, but again, like I said, his best work is done on the ground. Again, I do think that he's got some good timing on his level changes, good takedowns, although I do have to say his top control isn't particularly great. We saw in his fight against Zayam where, he was rushing through transitions. He was getting a bit frustrated that fight and was leaving a lot of space in between the transitions for, Zayam to get out of those positions. I think that if Mullarkey is able to stay composed, really, take his time with the transitions, he could have a lot more success with his ground game. I definitely feel that that is something that is fixable, something that he could work on. But on the feet, it does look like he struggles against a bit more technical strikers, as we've seen against Riddell and to an extent, Fares Zayam. Although with Zayam, I think it was the technique and the length that was giving Mullarkey a bit of trouble. And taking a look at his opponent, Khama Worthy here. So, he's got pretty decent stand-up. He's primarily a striker. He's got, that herky-jerky head movement. He's got great counter-punching, really good combination punching in general. And, we do see him counter with combinations, although, he does stand a bit flat-footed. Mullarkey isn't the biggest leg kicker, but, I do recommend, Mullarkey throwing a few out there just because Worthy does stand pretty heavy on that lead foot. Mullarkey does have to be careful not to throw too many naked leg kicks and not get too repetitive with it. Otherwise, Worthy can very well just time a counter and just land clean on Mullarkey and knock him out. But, as far as the stand-up goes for Worthy as well, he also has a pretty heavy body kick that he uses. Although I wouldn't really recommend going to that since we have seen Mullarkey catch some of those leg kicks and going through a takedown that way. As far as the grappling goes for Worthy, it doesn't seem too good. We haven't really seen him shoot an offensive takedown, but defensively, his takedown defense isn't bad. It's just that once he gets his back taken or once he is on the ground, he does seem to struggle a bit. We did see him struggle quite a bit against Penne, who was able to take him down, get his back, and just backpack him for most of, I believe, that second round that they fought. That being said, though, the back take and the backpacking is kind of a specialty of Penne's, so I can't hold that against him too much. But just seeing the defensive holes in Worthy's grappling is a little concerning, especially since he'll be going up against Mullarkey, who is a pretty well-rounded grappler in my opinion. But taking a look at this matchup and how I think it might play out, I think that Mullarkey, he will look to shoot a takedown as soon as possible. I mean, I do think that Worthy definitely is dangerous, especially in that first round. If he gets his timing down, if Mullarkey is a little defensively careless, he might get caught. But I don't think that will happen at too high of a clip here. I think more often than not, Mullarkey's probably going to work the jab a little bit, look to stay on the outside, work maybe a few leg kicks in there, and eventually just look to time that takedown. And once he gets it, I think that Worthy is gonna be in a world of trouble, especially as the fight goes on. It'll start to tire him out a bit. His punches will get a little more labored, and as the fight goes on, I definitely will start to favor Mullarkey quite a bit more. But again, like I said, Worthy is still very dangerous, especially early in the fight. But I think that once Mullarkey is able to get his grappling going, even though his top control isn't particularly good, we'll start to wear on the cardio of Worthy. And something that I do want to note also is Worthy is 34 years old. I mean, he looks a lot younger than that, but he's getting to that age where the cardio is starting to take a bit of a dive. And Worthy, he's really KO reliant. So all of that put together, I think it makes it a bit of a tougher matchup for Worthy here. And outside of the KO, Mullarkey does have to watch out for the guillotine of Worthy, who does look like he has a pretty sneaky guillotine. He was able to lock one up against Penne. But other than that, I think that this is a somewhat safe matchup for Mullarkey as long as he's able to close the distance on Worthy and just make it a really grindy fight. As far as the betting tips go, I already have a unit placed on Mullarkey at plus 135. I just feel that this fight, at worst is a pick'em, and I actually do think that Mullarkey should be slightly favored here. Outside of the knockout, I don't really see Worthy being able to win here. Maybe he might be able to get a decision if Mullarkey isn't able to take him down and he's able to do more damage on the feet. But just seeing how Worthy kind of struggled with the grappling of Penne, I see Mullarkey having similar success, maybe not as dominant, but I think he will win pretty clear minutes in each round and likely win a decision here. So I'm going to pick Jamie Mullarkey here, and I do have a 1-unit bet placed on him. Thomas Almeida versus Sean O'Malley, and what an interesting matchup between a busted prospect and someone who's on the cusp of being a busted prospect here. It's a great matchup. Someone is going to get their career back on track here. And I'm leaning O'Malley, but the line here is just way off because, look, taking a look at the betting odds here, O'Malley's the minus 320 favorite, and Almeida's the plus 270 underdog. And after O'Malley's last fight, I'm not sure how you could confidently bet him as a minus 320 favorite. Like, yeah, O'Malley seems to pass a lot of the eye tests. He looks great in a lot of his fights. He's very flashy on the feet. He's a very dynamic fighter. He's really light on the feet. He's able to switch stances. Has really nice kicks. He's got good straight punches. He's good at feinting, cutting angles, setting up his shots. I mean, as a striker, he's pretty damn good. However, the durability is a massive concern here. Like, he got hurt in that Andre Sukumtat fight and would have lost that fight if Sukumtat had a bit of awareness and fight IQ, but he was able to survive to the decision there and win the decision. But man, when you look at that fight, the first time it happens, you think it could be a fluke that he hurts himself, but then it happens again in his fight against Marlon Vera, and that wasn't even an injury. I think it just hit a nerve, and the guy just kind of crumpled in there. Like, the way he was hobbling in there, you'd think he blew out his ACL or something. And they even had to take him out on a stretcher after that fight. And it turns out he wasn't even injured. Honestly, that just made him look really soft. So for as good as his striking is, I think the amount of times he's been hurt and injured is a massive red flag. I'd say that's as bad as being chinny. Like, I wouldn't bet a minus 320 favorite if I knew it was chinny. And on the same note, I wouldn't bet minus 320 on someone who I think has got potentially a glass ankle or a glass wrist or something. I'd say that it's potentially worse since it's a bit more difficult landing clean headshots than it is, say, if you're just targeting the calf of someone who is known to have pretty weak bones or tendons or whatever the fuck O'Malley has. But taking a look at Almeida here, I mean, do I think he's the guy that could take O'Malley out here? I'm not 100% certain because looking at Almeida, I mean, he was coming off a pretty long layoff, and while his offensive striking isn't bad, he's got very terrible defense in my opinion. He was getting touched up by Jonathan Martinez in his last fight, and in my opinion, Martinez isn't really even that good of a striker. Martinez is primarily a kicker, and he was landing some pretty clean strikes on Almeida. Granted, Almeida was coming off of a pretty long layoff. You could say he was a bit rusty. And, it did look like he was starting to pick it up a bit in that third round, starting to get into a rhythm a bit. But I think that O'Malley's going to be a much better striker than Martinez. And, even if Almeida has worked off some of that rust, I think he's going to struggle quite a bit with the striking of O'Malley. And on top of the porous defense of Almeida, he's a bit chinny, in my opinion. He's been knocked out twice, and I think he's been rocked a number of times. So the chin on Almeida's probably not there anymore. And against someone like O'Malley, who's got really good accuracy, really good timing, there's a good chance that Almeida gets knocked out here. So as far as a pick goes, I'm going to pick O'Malley here. I think he's the better striker. I think he will find the mark on Almeida, but I'm not going to bet him at these odds. I think that his durability is a massive concern. I don't think that, even without the durability concerns, the line is a little bit wide. But with the durability concerns, I definitely do feel the line is wide. And if I'm Almeida, I'll look to drill those calf kicks and just chop at the legs of O'Malley because his durability is extremely suspect. And we've seen him hurt there twice, so you got to go to it. I mean, if you don't, I don't know what you're doing. So the pick here is O'Malley, assuming that he doesn't roll his fucking ankle here. Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. And let's take a look at the betting lines here first. Luque is going to be the minus 275 favorite, and the comeback on Woodley is plus 235. Look, I've been fading Woodley since the Usman fight, but this is a spot that I'm very hesitant about. And let me tell you why. Luque is a really pressure heavy fighter. He likes to back opponents down, put them up against the cage, and just unload on them. He's got a great jab, overhand, and some nasty hooks, but really it's his output and pressure that really sets him apart. He kind of reminds me a bit of Acosta, but a bit more technical, a bit more skilled, better footwork. Well, actually, I'd say Costa's just a more beefy, less technical version of Luque. I mean, Luque is just a beast in there, but defensively speaking, I wouldn't say he's bad, but he does get into some of these wild exchanges where he relies a bit on his chin, where he's willing to eat a shot to give a shot. And so far, it's worked out for him pretty well. I mean, his durability has held up in all of these fights, but there will come a time when his chin will crack. And with all of the wars he's been in recently, I think that the time is going to be coming real soon. And I actually did take Brown over Luque in his most recent fight. I was wrong there, but I thought that Brown had all the tools to potentially get Luque out of there, and I was wrong. Luque just completely outclassed him. However, I still feel that it is a bit concerning how much Luque still relies on his chin to get him through some of these wars. And with that said, do I think that Woodley is going to be the guy that gets him out of there? I don't know. Possibly. Look, I'm the first person to talk shit on Woodley. I've been fading him since, his Usman fight. And, I never thought that he was a very dominant champ. And, he's was always someone that's very, low output. Someone that, I honestly never really enjoyed watching or, thought was that great. I mean, it's extremely frustrating watching him just back up against the cage, occasionally, throwing that overhand and just squeaking his way to a split decision win, But the reason I'm not all over Luque against Woodley here like I was on, Usman or Burns or even Covington is that in this matchup, Luque is going to be giving Woodley the type of fight that he wants. As someone who's primarily a counterpuncher, Woodley is going to have a ton of opportunities to find that shot on Luque, who loves to move forward and loves to pressure. Guys like Burns and Usman and Covington, while they do have good stand-up, competent stand-up, they do their best work when they're grappling, and the grappling completely mitigates Woodley's best weapon, and that's his right hand. Luque, on the other hand, is not really a grappler, and he's primarily a striker, pressure-heavy striker. Is he going to go to his grappling this game because of the massive hole that's in Woodley's game? He might, but I suspect that Luque is just going to, attack Woodley like, he normally does, and he's just going to try and pressure him, look to back him up against the cage, which is exactly what Woodley wants. It's exactly what he does best, no matter, how annoying and frustrating it is. I'm not saying that Woodley is going to put Luque out here, but I would be a little cautious when it comes to playing Luque here, especially since he's going to be a pretty heavy favorite since he's minus 275 here. I think it's a little too wide here, especially since I do think that Woodley, he is still dangerous as bad as he's looked in these, his past 3 fights. And look, there is a good chance that Luque is able to just walk Woodley down and just tee off on him for 3 rounds. Because at the end of the day, I mean, Woodley, yeah, he is shot, and his heart is probably not there anymore, and supposedly he's dealing with some arthritis and stuff, but he's still got power, he's still dangerous, and with how often Luque likes to move forward and pressure, he's playing right into the hand of Woodley. Now, with all of that being said, I am going to go with Luque here. I'm going to pick him because I think he's got the output, he's got the youth, he's got the aggression, and if the fight goes to a decision, I do favor Luque, but I'm not going to bet on him because the line is way too wide, and I definitely do think that Woodley, he's still dangerous, and he is live for the knockout. And this potentially could be a fight where Woodley just reminds everyone about that right hand of his, and hopefully the line comes down a bit for his next fight, and we could bet against him again. But for this one, I don't think I'm going to bet on Luque here, but I'm going to wait for the props to open up here, and I might take a small shot on Woodley by KO because I think that there is a chance that Woodley is able to catch Luque here. So again, the pick is Luque, but I am looking to put a little bit on Woodley by KO. And we are finally here at the main event, the rematch between Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. I'm not usually very high on rematches, but for this one, I'm pretty excited to see how this fight is going to play out. I have a feeling this will play out pretty similarly to their first matchup, but before we get too deep into that, let's take a look at the odds first. Ngannou is going to be the minus 128 favorite, and the comeback on Miocic is plus 108. And once again, Stipe is going to be the dog here, which is pretty interesting. But taking a look at this matchup, and I'll be honest, I don't have too much analysis here. I just think that essentially what it boils down to is whether or not you think that Stipe is going to be able to get past that first round and a half. If he's got the durability to take some of the shots from Ngannou and survive and make it out of that first round and a half or so. I know there are going to be some other factors to consider, but ultimately I feel that's what it really comes down to, and that's the durability of Stipe. And this may or may not be a controversial opinion, but I 100% believe that if Stipe is able to make it out of that first round and a half, I think his chance of winning that fight are pretty much 100%. And obviously that's a big if, because Ngannou has, crazy power. He's super dangerous in that first round, but his cardio I just don't think really checks out. And, it's been 3 years since their last fight, and, he could have worked on other facets of his game. Maybe, look to pace himself a little better, maybe work on his takedown defense, work on his, get-ups, his ground game a little bit, to not just get utterly dominated on the ground. But at the end of the day, I think what it'll come down to is, the durability of Stipe, and then on Ngannou's end, his cardio, which I don't think it's something that you could truly fix for someone, his size, with his power, his muscles, and just the amount of power that he puts into each shot. I definitely do think that Ngannou will have been working on his cardio a bit, but I don't think he'll be making any drastic improvements. I honestly think that there is a bit of a limit for how good his cardio can be. Someone as muscle bound as he is, I don't think that Ngannou will have the fight-ending power that he usually has going into the latter part of the fight. Going into that third round, maybe halfway into that second round. I don't think that power is necessarily going to be able to translate too well. I think that even if Ngannou is able to pace himself a little better, pick his shots a little better, he may be able to carry that knockout power into that second round, maybe part of that third round. But I think that once Stipe is able to get his wrestling going a bit, it's just going to drain at the cardio of Ngannou. Even if Ngannou has gotten better at defending himself on the ground and, defending the takedowns, I think that once that third round rolls around, he's going to be gassed. I truly believe that Ngannou is pretty much a one-round fighter. Granted, he is super dangerous in that one round, but outside of that round, his effectiveness really diminishes quite a bit. So for that reason, I'm going to side with Stipe here. I mean, he's already felt some of Ngannou's best shots, and, he was eating some clean shots in that first round and was still able to win that round, in my opinion. But, I think that Stipe, he's going to have felt the best of Ngannou. He's not going to be, as afraid of Ngannou as everyone is. The mysticism around Ngannou is not going to be there for Stipe. He's faced him in there already, and he's already beaten him. And in a really dominant fashion, I might add. But, you do want to consider the fact that that was about 3 years ago. The durability of Stipe definitely hasn't gotten better since. I mean, maybe he's gotten a little better technically and he's in a bit better shape, but I definitely don't think that the durability will have gotten any better. I don't know if it's gotten worse, possibly, very likely, but I'm not sure how much worse it's gotten. And that's really what's keeping me from being super confident about this fight, right? And that's why the line is so close, because this is one of those fights that could really go either way. I mean, I definitely can see Ngannou knocking Stipe out, but I can also see Stipe, taking some of those shots, rolling with it, and just dragging Ngannou into deep waters here. So again, I'm going to go with Stipe here. I think he's going to weather the storm. I think he's going to look to wrestle with Ngannou, tire him out, and, I wouldn't even be surprised if Stipe got a late knockout, maybe a fourth or fifth round knockout. Once Ngannou's tired out, he's not defending himself as well. And, I don't see Stipe maybe, just grinding him out for, 5 rounds. I see him maybe just going for the kill this time. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he did decide to play it safe and just look to just control Ngannou against the cage or on the ground for the remainder of the fight. But I think that Stipe can definitely get it done here. So yeah, pick a Stipe, and I'm already gonna put a unit on Stipe here at dog odds. I think it's worth a shot, and I might look to just hedge out a bit too. Maybe put a quarter of a unit on Ngannou first round knockout. The props haven't come out yet, but I have a feeling it's not going to be that much better than the money line, since I have a feeling the bookies suspect that if Ngannou is to win, he's most likely going to be doing it in that first round, possibly the second round, but outside of that, I really don't see Ngannou winning it. For anyone who is picking Ngannou, I'm curious to see, how you guys see him winning this. Is it a first round knockout, second round knockout, or, maybe even a decision? I don't know, but I think the way that Ngannou wins is either first or second round knockout. I really don't see him, winning this by, decision, and definitely not by submission. So the pick here is going to be Stipe. Not super confident in it, but I think that he can get it done. I think that his toughness will come through. I think that his experience and his heart will get him through that early storm and lead him to win a very dominant decision or even get a late knockout win. And that'll do it for another edition of this podcast. Got a number of bets lined up already, and I really hope no more fights fall off the card. This is already a really thin card as it is, but really looking to bounce back here. I really like some of these spots, and let me know what you guys think. Am I completely off here? And who do you guys have? I know a lot of my picks have been pretty ass so far, but hopefully the analysis is still good. But, I'll keep doing it, keep it up, and, I have a feeling this will be a good week to bounce back. A lot of good spots here. But, yeah, I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys next week. Or, not next week. I think we got 2 weeks off for after this next event. So I guess I'll catch you the week after.